And I was quite surprised at Andy because Andy was a big guy. Andy was 3, 6'4" maybe, and a hulking big guy, and a good 17 or 18 stone, and Andy could run. He didn't run at a fast pace, but he jogged, but he wasn't breathless, and he didn't sweat. And Andy would lap, you know, maybe 10 times around the area, and each lap was a mile. And Andy would run that no problem at all. I'd be hanging out. I fucking got to be hanging out after 2 miles in the beginning. But slowly, catch the monkey. I started to, my cardio got really good, and I enjoyed running again. And yeah, I was happy. I was content. I would phone Dave, every 2 or 3 days. Um, Obviously being busy. Um, and Dave would automatically, you could hear his voice pick up, fucking hell, Gibbo, fucking good to hear from you, call. This is the crack down here, this is the crack that's happening. And he never, ever talked about himself. And I thought he was okay. I'd say Dave, oh, fucking great call, everyone's good, scuba's going well, fucking Manta 4's making money, I miss you down here, everybody's asking about you, you know what I mean, Fiona's asking about you, Amanda was asking about you even, and I just says, fucking don't tell her nothing, and he goes, I don't tell him anything, Cole, you know what I mean, he says, he said even Sue was asking how you were getting on, and I said, oh, okay, which kind of surprised me, and Dave was like, oh, Cole, she might be a bitch and everything like that, but she does like you, and she felt bad. He goes, jokingly get them to throw the water over me and all this type of stuff. And she says she was really shocked. She says to see how defensive that you were of me. You know what I mean? And he goes, I had to set it straight. He goes and explain a few things. He goes that the bond that you and I have, and you know what I mean, and that we take care of each other, and this is what men are like, and you know what I mean. And I told her about the shitty upbringing that you had, the way that you were bullied, by your stepdad and abused. He goes, and all this type of stuff. He goes, I had to sit down. He goes and explain that to her, to explain how you were. He says, because when they met me in the beginning, when Sue met me, I was quite quiet and easygoing. When she came over to Northern Ireland, over to Fintner to meet Dave's parents, obviously, and I had met Sue, and Sue was a lot thinner, and she was younger and stuff, and she didn't have cancer, and she was a lot nicer. And she thought everybody in Northern Ireland was fucking cuckoo, because all we did was swear and drink and fight, and we are quite a bit of a psycho fucking race, to be honest. But going up through the troubles, set a lot of people on different paths. It split communities, it split families, it split friends, and it got to the point where you either had to be Catholic or Protestant back then, and that was dangerous. Going up in the troubles of people being killed and places being bombed. So, that was luggage that I had with me as well. Because coming from a mixed family and coming from, a stepfather, who was in the British military, there was a big divide. That put a big divide, for me with friends as well. So I carried all that shit. And anyway, Dave was like, oh, Carl, Dick Davis was asking about you, and Gaz was asking about you. And I said, well, I fucking got my phone number, Dave. Fucking tell him to give me a call, And he goes, oh, Dick said he's going to give you a call this evening. And I said, that's great, because, I'll be in this evening. So I started telling, Dave about going to the range. And, oh, fucking hell, Carl, you fucking lucky bastard, you know what I mean? And he goes, can we go to the range when I come up? And I goes, yeah. I said, I'm a member. We'll go to the range. It's, it's 25 minutes, 30 minutes. From where we live, you know what I mean, Miami shooting range, and we'll go, and fucking me and you and Dick, and we'll go fucking shoot some lead and all this type of stuff. And Dave being an ex soldier, Dick being an ex-soldier, Dick had guns, Dick had his own guns, not in Belize, but had his own guns in the States. And Dick would go on his land and he would shoot the wild hogs and the white-tailed deer and all this type of stuff. And so Dick was quite experienced with guns. I think the last time David fired a gun was when he left the military, which was probably, 10 years prior to that, so we're going to have a good bit of crack. I'd also mentioned to Dave that Andy suggests, that I learn to fly, and Dave was like, what? You're going to fly, Gibson? Holy fuck. Let me know when you're doing that. And he goes, no, I'll fucking warn everybody, and he was always putting a spin on things, and he was, he was always coming out with something that just made me giggle, and I'd be having tears streaming down my eyes, just laughing, at the way Dave was going on, because Dave was like a little petulant 5-year-old, and you know, he could make a joke out of anything, and he always had me in fits of giggling, and that's why I loved, you know, spending time with Dave and talking to Dave, and you know, and when Dave, you know, married, obviously people's priorities change. You know, you have a girlfriend, and then you have a fiance, and then you have a wife, and then you have children, and you build a family, and you build a business, and the time that you had before that just diminishes, you know what I mean? Because obviously, you know, your wife becomes your priority, you know, your family home becomes a priority, working becomes a priority, you know, providing becomes a priority, you know. And back in the day, you know, not like it is now, fucking, you know, everybody wants to be a boss bitch and they don't need a man and all this type of stuff, and you can't open the door for nobody anymore. I can do that myself, and don't pull out a chair anymore. I don't need a man to pull out a chair for me, and all this fucking shit that's going around, you know. Men are men, you know. And that's what a man's job was. It's not that the woman's job was to stay at home and have kids, but if you're with somebody, it's not 50% from each other. It's 100%. You know, in a relationship, it's fucking 100%. Not I'll give you 50% and you give me 50%. That shit doesn't work. It's 100% of nothing. You know what I mean? And that's just life. So, you know, back in the 90s, you know, unless you were rich, you know, and you know, when you had a husband that really didn't give a fuck about you, you know, people stayed together to build a family and respected each other. And you know, Dave was like that. Dave was an alpha male, you know, and you know, and Sue was an alpha female, and it just wasn't working. Dave always believed, you know, and was always the type of person that it was his responsibility to provide for his family. You know what I mean? And it was his responsibility to care for his children. And David would homeschool these kids. David's very smart. So Dave would sit at home and he would homeschool these kids and he would do homework with them, you know what I mean? Whereas Sue had a maid, Esmeralda, and she had a maid, and Esmeralda would teach the kids Spanish and teach the kids when they went in school and look after the kids. Whereas Sue would sleep, or Sue would be in a restaurant drinking with her pals. And Sue would run the restaurant, you know, because the restaurant belonged to Mama Sue, her mum, Sue, and her brother George. So it was split 3 ways. And the only person that I saw really working in that restaurant was Mama Sue, because she was in the kitchen cooking, and she was a phenomenal cook. And George was the head of the Belize Water Board, so he was working full time. And Sue was either sleeping, watching Days of Our Lives, you know, or fucking, you know, sitting up with their fucking shitty friends and slagging everybody off. And so Dave, in my opinion, and in my eyes, Dave had his priorities straight, because that's the type of person I was. You know, I wanted to provide, have a family and have kids and be a provider, you know, not take anything away from the woman. She wanted to work, no problem at all, you know, but it takes two parents to raise children, not fucking one parent and a maid. That's not how I saw my life, and it's not how Dave saw his. So Dave was all excited to come up. Him and Dick had made arrangements to come up after I'd gone down, and I would be going down in a couple of weeks. Our next stop for me and Andy would be to Bermuda. So we were going to be flying to Bermuda, which was, I don't know, I hadn't been there, which probably was a good 5 or 6 hour flight in Andy's plane. And that would be our next port of call. So the trip back from Mexico was great. There was no dramas. We cleared customs. We left the hotel. We cleared customs at Cancun International Airport, and we boarded the plane. Andy filed a flight plan, and then Andy let me take the plane up. Andy, you know, says, get your feet on the you know, on the rudder's call, grab a hold of the yoke. He goes, I'm going to guide you. He says, I'm going to tell you what to do. So Andy trimmed everything in. We checked around the plane, the pitot tubes, props, ailerons, servo tabs underneath, you know, all over. Checked the skin of the plane was intact, everything. Andy even went underneath with a small glass bottle and checked the fuel. He showed me how to check fuel, that the fuel was clean. The plane had been refueled. Andy had loads of money. He had loads of orders, 3 new clients that Andy was looking forward to, and life was good. Andy was very happy. He even cracked a smile, which was you didn't really see very much from Andy, but he was happy enough. And you know, Andy had phoned round the various Decor, you know, Scuba Pro, Avanti, and all these other ones, Avanti Plana, and all these other ones, and you know, told me, yes, I've got money for you guys. I'll be popping in on the way back, you know, and you know, blah 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 blah, and Andy would be taking more orders.